Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. I stopped in to an empty church recently to pray. Some of you know that I do this on a regular basis. I find it very helpful to sit in an empty church and talk to God and ask questions. And, you're just in a better atmosphere because you're in a quiet place, and it's a place where people go to pray. So, the stage is set for you. If you go into an empty church to pray, the stage is set, everything is set up for you to the right attitude and the right environment, etc. So I was doing that, and I was reminded of so many things. They started popping into my head as soon as I got there. And what was happening is God was reminding me of some wonderful memories I have in my past. And all of this made me realize what a wonderful gift the gift of memory is. God created us with wonderful abilities, and one of them is to have wonderful memories. And we can have memories of 49 or 59 years of things in our mind. You can sit in an empty church for a whole hour and, enjoy all of these memories that keep popping into your head. So one of the things I remembered was how when I was inspired by God to start these radio shows, weekly radio shows, I didn't feel I could do it. I felt it was impossible. I had so many other things to be concerned about and trying to achieve. I didn't think I could carve out the time to do this. And as you may recall, if you've been listening to all of our shows, I was driving in a car at the time, and I was telling God that I can't do it. And what happened was, when I said to God, I can't do it, I went through a place where you pass radio towers, and the radio station that was on waved out, and a new radio station waved in as I was driving down this highway. And when the new station waved in, the announcer was saying, and now Tony is going to tell us about some of his miracles. So here I was debating with God in the car while I was driving and saying, I can't do it. And the radio changes stations at that moment while God is telling me I can do it. And the radio station announcer on the new station says, and now Tony's going to tell us some stories about his miracles. And it turned out that there's a minister called TonyDavis+, pretty famous, you may know him. But TonyDavis was going to be coming on the radio at that moment in that station that was waving on. So I was reminded of that. Here I am, well into 2 years of doing this now. And I was remembering that amazing thing. I mean, if that happened to you, you'd be amazed. You're talking to God, say you can't do something, and the radio tells you you are doing something, because we had the same first name, Tony. The next thing that happened was I started remembering another wonderful thing that had happened in that church many years ago, about 3 years ago at this point. I was in that church and I was thinking of a certain song was running through my mind, and this was 3 years ago. And while I was in there thinking about it 3 years ago, our church organist decided to be practicing a certain song, and she started to practice the same song that I was thinking about. And I bring it up today because while I was in this church right now, and this is 3 years later, I'm thinking of it, I'm reflecting on that story, and don't you know what happens is the organist comes in, she sees me sitting there, she tells me that she came in today, and oh, by the way, she's going to be practicing that same song, because she knew about the event. When I was thinking about it 3 years ago and she was playing it, I told her the story. As a matter of fact, I put this story about her practicing in our second book. So in book number 2, you'll hear how the organist came in and was playing the song that I was thinking of. Well, here now, 3 years later, I'm sitting in there in the church thinking about it again and reflecting on this fond memory. And she actually comes in now, walks in 3 years later, and she tells me she's going to be practicing the same song. So again, God is using memories to talk to us, you see. God is putting all these thoughts in my mind. He's got me thinking about Tony Davis. He's got me thinking about the organist coming in. And what happens? The organist actually comes in now 3 years later while I'm thinking about it. I'm sharing all of this so that you too can sit down someday and just reflect on all of your wonderful memories and realize that it's a gift from God. He has given us the ability to sit down and enjoy all of our past memories. The next thing I'd like to share with you is something I hope might be helpful to you and your children and your family. I recently went to an eye doctor, and he prescribed some eye drops that I needed to use for glaucoma. Because I have symptoms that I'm going to have a problem with glaucoma. So I started taking the drops, and I started to have heart palpitations, and I couldn't associate taking eye drops with suddenly getting palpitations. I was taking the drops for about 5 days, and I started getting heart palpitations. I called a pharmacist to check it out to see if these drops would cause it. They said no. I called the doctor's office. They said no. And then I got inspired by God, and God is all-powerful and all-wise, right? Well, I got inspired by him to take out the flyer inside the box, and sure enough, in fine print that was very hard to see, it says that these drops can cause palpitations. So I share this with you because if you have children or even yourself where you're having situations happen to you, it's good to reflect on what medications you've recently started and check things out like this and ask God. I mean, the pharmacist and the doctor said no, but God said yes to check the script inside. And I thought you might appreciate, God, again, is inspiring us with memories, but he also inspires us with wisdom sometimes when we need to notice something. So I stopped taking the eye drops and got a different prescription. Another coincidence miracle I experienced recently was I attended the funeral services for a good friend, and I noticed when I left the church after the funeral service, got to my car and I was driving out of the parking lot, that the mileage on my car had reached the number 777 on the odometer as I had entered the driveway of the church. So I point this out because our show is about noticing coincidence miracles, and if you attend a funeral of a dear friend and you see your odometer happens to hit it had thousands of miles, but the last 3 digits were 777. If you notice these things, for let's say for a year or two, I've been noticing them now for over 50 years. They are little clues that God is talking to you, little signs like Morse code. And I wanted to share this one with you, and I hope it has some impact because I hope you'll start noticing things like that during your week, and you'll notice that God is trying to talk to you with these signs and these clues that he sends to us. Our next coincidence miracle is I was trying to solve a problem. I had some thing I was working on and trying to solve, and I had an inspiration that I met somebody about 2 years ago who is knowledgeable about these kinds of things, and I thought, gee, if I could get in touch with that person again. But it was a very casual meeting. I was really meeting with someone else, and this person came by. So now in order to do this, I would have to go back and talk to the person I was meeting with and try to find out if they knew the person, etc. So I was thinking about that, and then I got inspired to take a break. It was time to take a break for the day. So I took a break. I drove over to a park where I could walk and talk to God and unwind a little bit while I'm walking. Good exercise mentally and physically. And I get to the park. Lo and behold, I get out of my car, and there's the person that I met 2 years ago. I couldn't even remember their name, but the person was there. They were at the same park that I just got inspired to go to. Hopefully this shows how amazing our God is. You get a thought about a person that you saw 2 years ago, and you get inspired to go to a park, and suddenly there's the person at the park. You see, it's very clear that God is talking to us when these things happen. It's obvious. You're getting inspired. He's directing you. He knows the person is going to be there. So if this happens to you once a day, that should be sufficient to convince you that God is talking to you. I would say if it happens twice a week, that should be enough to convince you. Our next coincidence miracle was I was inspired one day to send a text to 2 of my children. And as I picked up my phone to start to send the text, I got 2 texts come in from each child. Each child simultaneously sent me a text at the same moment as I was about to send them a group text. Another coincidence miracle because I was following the inspiration I got from God to send a note to 2 of my children, and those 2 children were actually sending me a text at that moment. I'm sharing this because I'm trying to convince everybody I can that when you talk to God and you get inspirations, these kinds of things will happen to you every day. Our next coincidence miracle is about a case where I was driving by a business that I knew my friend owned the business, and I knew he was inside because I knew what his schedule was. And I was driving by. I had not called him or talked to him, but I got inspired to stop in, just casually go in and say hello. And that's not usual. I don't usually do that without calling people first. But it was a strong inspiration, so I pulled the car over and walked inside, and lo and behold, amazing thing happened. He said, "Tony, I can't believe it." He had purchased our books, and he has read our books, and he knows all about coincidence miracles. And he said that he just had a fantastic coincidence miracle just before I walked in the door. So for me, it was a clear sign again that God was inspiring me to stop and go inside because he knew that my friend was getting a coincidence miracle as I was passing by. The next coincidence miracle happened right after I left my friend's office. Because I left his office, I pulled out of his driveway, and the first car coming toward me had a license plate with the letter U, the letter G, and the number 7, UG7. Well, U is the 21st letter of the alphabet, so that's 3 sevens. G is the 7th letter of the alphabet, that's a 7, and then 7 was another 7, so it was UG7, which adds up to 5 sevens. The fact that this happened as I was driving out of my friend's driveway is what makes it a coincidence miracle, because God had inspired me to go in and say hello, and now he's given me a clue as I'm leaving that I did what he wanted me to do. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.